So sorry for the latency. I think got some kind of technical issue, but we'll just start. So I hope most of you guys have heard about Palo Alto before. So this is kind of continuation or some kind of an update of some new developments along the next generation firewall, which was invented at around the year 2007. So it's worth noting that Palo Alto Networks were the pioneer of the next generation firewall, which was a little bit disruptive in the cybersecurity business. So it redefined on how we're supposed to be looking at cybersecurity, how we're supposed to be consuming cybersecurity. After having these solutions quite running for quite some time, things like legacy firewalls, we've been transitioning to UTMs, and now we are in the next generation firewall. So this guy called Neil Zook, the founder of Palo Alto Networks, so that there is a need for continuous innovations, because we have to understand that the attackers out there, they are also innovative. They are looking for different ways in which they can be able to combat these new techniques in a way that are meant to block them from accessing what they need to access in the infrastructure. So again, a few weeks ago, Palo Alto again saw that there is some new developments in the cybersecurity in the way things are being done. So one of the things that we need to see here is that there is some kind of a research that was done by the unit called the Unit 42. So Unit 42 is one of the intelligence team that does research and make sure that they can be able to combat the new adversaries. So what they did, they made some kind of a malware which was meant to be some kind of a study, and this malware was laid out there. It was not meant to be destructive, but more of trying to understand what is the landscape, what are the trends in which the other guys out there are doing or are using to make sure that they can be able to combat the normal firewalls. So when they released this kind of a sample out there, they were shocked that 30 minutes later, they were able to see more than 40,000 same kind of a malware, but now in different variants, right? So this kind of metamorphosis was really so fast that the normal firewalls with the signature distribution that is done at around 15 minutes or maybe less or maybe more than that could not really be able to catch up or to be able to cope up with these kind of trends. So was just one sample that was reached out there. So what if we've got millions or maybe thousands of these kind of uh, ashes that are coming out through these kind of new variants? So and again, we are seeing new devices that are coming into the network without our knowledge. The adoption of IoT technology within the invention of 5G is really going at a rate that we cannot be able to determine what is the rate or what is the number of the current devices that are embedded within our infrastructure. So again, as you know, the new norm, as you know what COVID redefined, we're seeing data being everywhere. This is not the way that we used to do, like in a legacy platform, where we used to have this kind of approach where data was at the data center. So we used to have a firewall that is blocking guys from the untrust, to which we used to know that this is where the bad guys are residing, and we knew that our jewels are still in the DC. So we knew that anybody who is within the private segment, then these are the good guys. But we're seeing a lot of dynamics whereby there is adoption of the zero trust, whereby we cannot really say that we or anybody who is within the trust zone is a good guy. We've seen banks trying to adopt this kind of an approach of zero trust by making sure that it's a requirement that you need to have a DC firewall so that you can have full visibility on east-west traffic. This is one of the traffic that is most, that is having most of the traffic, and which we normally say that is so much vulnerable. We see that most of the attacks really are emerging from even the inside threats, which are some of the guys who are within, that you might think that this is from the HR, but they might be working with someone from outside to be able to get into the infrastructure, and then they be able to do some adversary. So We can also be able to establish that based on some research that has been done on various attacks that happened a couple of months ago. We were able to see that some of the guys might be newbies. They might not be able to understand much about technology, but they were allowing the bad guys to do things like, inserting OneDrive and creating an ad hoc network that can easily get these guys a backdoor access, which might not be really visible from the normal firewall, which is at the gateway or at the perimeter. So, a little bit faster, trying to understand the kind of manual responses that we normally have towards this kind of approach. So, we're talking about patient zero. This is the first guy who's going to be attacked, like maybe the first guy who got coronavirus, until the time that now we're going to get the vaccine, leave alone maybe the candidate. So, in the normal IT world, we'll see that it's around 206 days, which might be a little bit longer for the other, these kind of viruses that are related maybe to corona, SARS, and the stuff. So here we are seeing that we are going to see that someone is going to be attacked because this is something that the firewall didn't see before, or maybe the signatures have not yet been distributed to this firewall. So which means that there is some kind of a compromise that is going to be there. We used to have Wildfire, which was the industry's fastest sandboxing solution that was able to distribute signatures. The minimum was around 5 minutes, which was really some good time compared to other solutions out there. But again, these cannot really be able to catch up with this kind of automated attacks. So we also need to understand that we are seeing some devices that the network admins cannot be able to say that I am having this kind of a device which is an IoT. Then you might think that these IoT devices are communicating. So we normally take care of the special segments which are concerned with maybe servers, application servers. We're talking about some of the PCs which are communicating and other components which are really visible according to the normal firewall. But what about the devices, IoT devices, which we don't normally take much consideration into? So, what if there is a machine that is doing some probing to understand how many devices or such kind of devices are there? Then being able to use or compromise these devices in order to create command and control communications. So, one of these incidents has happened in one of the casino in US, whereby these kind of sensors were connected to the network and one leg was connected to the internet, whereby these sensors were sending some data to the cloud for monitoring purposes. So they were able to compromise these IoT devices and they were able to get into the LAN or the private segment and they were able to steal millions worth of credit cards and other user data. So this was really a compromise that we cannot just let go like that without trying to have an holistic picture on how many such kind of incidents that you can have, how many such kind of setups that you have in the real world at the moment. So it's also we have seen a couple of changes, like when we are trying to troubleshoot in most of the end user or different customers, whereby there's sometimes there is a lot of noise that we need to make sure that we create the first remedy, which is going to make sure that we at least try to reduce the noise by creating some policies, for example, allow. Then later on, we might even forget because of the amount of tasks that we normally take in a day. So, according to the Forrester research, we will see that 99% of the firewall breaches they come because of the misconfiguration that is done. So, you think that you made the right config, but this config is leaving some gaps which are going to let the bad guys be able to penetrate into the infrastructure. So here, what it means is that I love one of the things about Palo Alto is that after 2 months or after 1 month, there is this what we call the BPA, best practice assessment. So think about this like some kind of an audit that you normally do to make sure that you covered. Yes, you have the firewall. Yes, you have the right subscriptions, but have you really configured it as per the recommended standards? So even if you have maybe the best medicine and you don't take it according to the best way that the doctors have prescribed, still it cannot work as it was anticipated. So here, so what they do, they pull out the configuration from the firewall, which some of the third-party consultants do at a very good fee. So they take to the portal, they run in an automated platform, which can be able to highlight key areas that you have not configured according to the best way that is recommended by the security engineers to make sure that you've really tightened the firewall. Anyway, one of the things that's what noting that is that setting up the firewall is not one of the key things. The most important thing is fine-tuning this firewall to make sure that it's really not going to leave any kind of traces or any kind of gaps that the bad guys can be able to get into the network. So 90% you realize that some of these breaches. So how can we be able to reduce this kind of human errors or this kind of misconfigurations that are going to act like an Achilles heel? So one of the most disruptive approach that is needed is what we have to make sure that we have to leverage things that are going to reduce this kind of manual response. How can we be able to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to be able to move security from just a normal security to an intelligent way of handling security matters? So this is what Palo Alto has been thinking for quite some time, and a couple of a couple of months ago, they were able to have this into practice. So this has taken them more than I think 3 years trying to fine tune this. Machine learning most of the time is really prone to false positives and a lot of errors. So this really required some good time to fine tune to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing without causing any kind of business disruptions. So we are going to focus on today what are some of the key things that we're going to see. So in the Palo OS 10.0, one of the latest operating systems from Palo Alto networks, we've been focusing on version 9.0 and 9.1, which was able to give birth to what we call SD1. So in this new release, we are going to see more than 75 plus or more than 64 plus main features, and others were some good updates, and some of them were advancements that were made. So we might not focus on fully on all these kind of components, but I want to highlight some things that are worth noting. What is this in the cybersecurity industry that we need to understand? What is this kind of different approach that we need to understand? So some of the questions that we are supposed to be asking ourselves: are we getting security that we need? Do we get the protection that is able to combat against this kind of automated attacks? So if the attackers are using machine learning to be able to automate their attacks. So is your firewall able to automate this? So for the first time in the cybersecurity industry, we are going to get the first firewall that is going to run machine learning at the core of the security. I normally think about this like as bringing the sandboxing environment right into the core of security. Like instead of querying the cloud or maybe the private with the private and boxing solution, this is purely inline, which is able to make decisions in real time and being able to combat more than 95% or more than that of the total stress that have not been seen before. So here the approach here is to make sure that we can be able to prevent the never seen before malwares. So if these are new variants that are coming in, and they've been just automated or they've been just tweaked so that the hash can be able to change. Still, using machine learning, you can be able to identify and block this at the line speed. Then another thing is to be able to do analysis of the traffic. Use machine learning to be able to detect automatically based on different patented architecture and algorithms to be able to identify these IoT devices and create policies. So based on this kind of a patented technology, we can be able to identify that this kind of traffic must be associated with a certain device. Then this device, I think, based on the way we can be able to analyze this traffic. This must be an IoT device, maybe from Cisco, or maybe from Dell, or maybe from another vendor. Then, based on what we know about these kind of protocols they're using, we need to protect against 1, 2, 3 attacks that we are normally associated with this. So, which means that we are going to translate this into some policy configurations, some policy recommendations that are going now to be applied to be able to reduce this kind of attack service. Then another thing is to make sure that we can also get some kind of a third party or some kind of a third guy who is an IT guy. So think about it like an extension, getting another IT security guy who is going to help you in making this kind of policies. So for the first time, getting this kind of an approach whereby you are going to get another person helping you in making security policies. So this can reduce this kind of errors that we get through the manual response. So Palo Alto, again, using machine learning, can be able to recommend policies based on the analysis that it has done before on the traffic, to be able to give you some of the policies or some of the rules like you need to make in order to optimize your security. Then the third thing is that to make sure that you can use this kind of crowd scale approach to be able to pull this kind of data, synthesize and continuously optimize this kind of engines that are running this. So today, so this is the introduction of the first ML-powered NGFW. I don't know whether you guys have seen another one before. Maybe you can leave a question or a comment on the question and answer section so that we can maybe be able to discuss after this. So maybe is there something that technology that you've seen before? Is there something that interesting that you've heard about that we need to take this discussion a little bit higher or deeper? So leave a comment there so then we can be able to discuss after this. So again, if you have any question or any clarification that you want done, you can always leave something something like a question there, then you can be able to discuss after this. All right. So, what are these industry first? So, what are these? This is not something that is funny in the cybersecurity industry. We need to understand that Palo Alto, these are the guys who started the first next generation firewall. Continuous disruptions have been there. Some of the things like single pass parallel processing, which are some of the technologies that we haven't seen any vendor or anybody out there trying to match. So again, taking the bar a little bit higher. So we can be able to ascertain that we can get up to 95% of unknown files and web-based attacks being prevented inline at a line speed. So this can be able to reduce the attack service and also be able to reduce this kind of what we call patient zero, the number of guys being hit because they didn't get this kind of signatures before. So by embedding ML into the core of the network security all to all of the platform, we can be able to mitigate a lot of these kind of attacks. Then, by optimizing Wildfire, which does delivery that I talked about used to be 5 to 15 minutes, again, which was the industry's fastest. Now, this was pushed higher by going deeper and reducing the delivery into a sub-second. So we are talking about less than 10-second signature delivery, what you call near real time. Thus can be reduced more than 99.5%, which I normally talk about 100% reduction of the infected systems. So this again has expedited and reduced the amount of time that it normally takes. So which means that this is something that is configurable if you want to implement this to talking about like a couple of seconds. So this is like real time delivery of signatures. Then having complete visibility natively integrated to the security solution again, this is the first time. And the beta version was able to do more than 3 times IoT discovery, which means that it can be able to detect all these kind of devices 3 times, and being able now to enforce this kind of security. So as we know that attack vectors are quite many, so we need to make sure that we are combating this and we're reducing this attack service that are emanating from any kind of component or any kind of area within the network. All right. Then another feature that I talked about, this kind of automatic policy recommendation. This is one of the features I'm very sure most of the network admins we really like to see or want to recommend. So when you talk about something that makes their life easier, we know that sometimes firewalls are very much complicated to configure, and this is what leaves a lot of breaches behind our firewalls. So someone is just he can't understand why they were attacked, and yet they had policies, they had updates in place. So we've got automated systems that can be able to combat this. So how is now the platform more strong than the other? So what is this kind of value that is being created by all these kind of components? So one, we seeing that threat prevention has been optimized by now making sure that things can be able to be blocked almost instant. And also we can see that wildfire and wildfire and sandboxing solution has been reduced uh, in the way it distributes the signatures up to a sub-second. So this is a single digit that it can be able to deliver signatures. So what you call a zero delay or near real time. Then we have got URL filtering. This is one of the subscriptions that enhances some things like making policies instead of just decrypting maybe everything. So URL category, based on the category, you can say that for the category of low risk, I don't want to decrypt anything, but I want to enforce these engines to do the scanning. But high level, if this is a category where this is high risk, then you can be able to enforce decryption, hence have more visibility on what's going on. Then you can say that anything to do with maybe phishing sites, anything to do with the hacking sites, we need to make sure that we can block any kind of download that is going to happen, or any or a certain special number of files that are going to be downloaded from this section, or maybe block them. So then the DNS security, which is again something that most of the vendors don't have out there. We've seen most of the attacks that are emanating from the DNS. So which means that we are seeing DNS security as one of the requirements, especially for the banks. This is because again of automation that is happening out there. We have got what we call the DGS, dynamically generated algorithms, which are again creating very short-lived URLs that the normal firewall cannot be able to cope up with fetching and querying from the threat intelligence clouds out there to be able to understand whether this is a malicious URL or has it been associated with the bad guys out there. So again, this is another thing that is also worth noting. Then we've got IoT, which is again was one of the latest modules to be onboarded to the firewall. That is again making sure that we reduce this kind of attack services that are emanating from IoT or these technologies that are going to be consumed thanks to 5G. Then also that's the DLP capabilities, which is going to make sure that certain sets of data are not going to be stolen from the company or from the organization based on how they think about it, based on their classifications. Then also the SaaS component, which again protects us against attacks that are going to be based on a software as a service, talking about things like G Suite, Office 365, Slack, all these kind of enterprise software as a service solutions. Then we can also be able to use Global Protect to be able to enforce the fourth dimensions. I talked about more than 75 plus features that were onboarded. It's worth noting that we used to have three kind of ways in which the next generation firewall was to be based on. So this is the content ID, application ID, and user identification or user ID. We've got now another fourth one that came with this kind of PAN-OS 10.0, which is called device ID. So by using Global Protect, we can also be able to enforce things like device identification. So which means that you can be able to make policies based on the device, a certain device. By using some native immutable characteristics, things like serial numbers, hardware ID, you can be able to tell that this is the device that we saw that was compromised, and it can be quarantined. You can see up there is Panorama, which is the network management system or a central management system that can also be able to enforce this kind of policies. So if I saw something on the end user, by enforcing this or by incorporating things like Cortex XDR 2.0, 2.5, which are now advanced security capabilities that are meant for the endpoint. So you can be able to send a signal to quarantine this device not to communicate with the others until it is sanitized. Then now it can be able to be pushed out of the quarantine zone. So even if this device moves to another SSID or a different network, still you can be able to detect this based on the device ID, which is the fourth dimension that we talked about. that Palo Alto again brought on board on this version 10.0. So it's also worth noting that some of the features that are new in this platform, things like new signatures, delivery, and adoption. So we can now be able to consume open source signatures, things like Sudkata and Snort. So these kind of open source signatures that were being requested by most of the institutions, especially in the government, now can be able to be onboarded. So we can now be able to consume. These are some of the things that some competition like Firepower was able to do, and now we can do this much better thanks to the integrations being done. So another one is SD1, so which means that we can now be able to connect branches and have this kind of application optimization securely. So we used to have the MPLS, which was just pushing traffic based on the routing, but now intelligent way of doing this is by application identification and also trying to analyze different routes. So the metrics that were normally being used by things like MPLS were just basic, routing based protocols. Things like ICMP, try to check on the pings. So if we had something like Browning, which means that you can have 3 timeouts and then pings, maybe 40 pings, and then 4 timeouts. So this cannot really tell that the link is down or the link is efficient. So application identification can now be able to be used to say that, okay, for this traffic, I can see that the link B or the LTE or maybe there's another link that is a little bit stable can be used. And you can use this multi-link to push data and then merge it at the end without affecting the performance. So SD1 again is a very nice solution that most of the organizations are adopting so that they can be able, instead of pushing everything, for example, to the HQ backhauling, you can easily get a demarcation, or they can easily go to the internet straight from the branch level instead of using the restricted or maybe 5 Mbps link list line that is going to be used for special data that might be hosted in the HQ. So if someone wants to access things like Facebook or maybe Office 365, which is hosted at the cloud, they can easily go direct instead of being backhauled to the HQ. Then they can be able to access it to the internet. So these are some of the new capabilities and a lot of optimizations that have been done on this SD1. I'd like you guys to check this out on the on the Palo Alto website. If you can just search Palo Alto, maybe PanOS 10.0, you can be able to see more of these kind of features. So we can't finish most of these features. Like in the hardware part of it, we were able to push now more than 700 gigabits per second. This is purely throughput prevention, not just firewall prevention. We used to be again the fastest with 350 gigabits per second. Still, we were the leaders. And now with the PanOS 10.0, some optimizations were done, and then some of the programming was done thanks to this kind of FPGAs. Then now it was now able to push up to that level. So nobody comes even closer to this. So this is again an assurance that you're going to have a solution that can be able to go a couple of years or maybe the return on investment using your same solution. You can be able to expand without any challenges. So something that is again worth noting is that apart from addressing almost all the clouds using the VM series, now we have got another paradigm which is now the CN series. So the CN series is the first in the market or in the security industry, the first containerized next generation firewall. So that is the CN series. So it's going to make sure that you've got all the kind of sources that are going to be containerized, maybe in Kubernetes, to be able to incorporate these kind of technologies in a containerized manner, to be able to be lightweight and being able to secure all those kind of workloads that are containerized. So this is again a very innovative feature that came. So it's worth noting that still we used to have these kind of solutions before, and again nobody was offering this from the competition side. So you were able to address the serverless computing domain and also the container security domain, which most of them have not yet discovered or maybe have not yet ventured into. So in short, Palo is trying to make sure that it can also try to protect us against most of these kind of attacks and most of these technologies to be able to employ the zero trust approach wherever the data is, no matter what architecture that you guys are using. So also, what we did mention, because this was more of a network security platform, but again, it's worth noting that the advancements that have been made on the endpoint, advanced endpoint security, which was called Traps, now Cortex XDR 2.0, because of a couple of capabilities that were done. So again, you can be able to lock down, for example, have policies that I only want only a USB with this kind of serial number to be able to be inserted to end user machines. So here you can be able to have policies. For example, let's say the IT team is working on updates which might be a little bit bulky and they want to have manual installations instead of having this to be pushed via the network. So you can have policies on different endpoints. I don't want to see anybody putting in or inserting a flash disk that might be compromised. So you make policies that unless you see this kind of vendor only with this serial number, this is the one that you can be able to accept. So which means that it's going to make sure that all these kind of malicious files, all these kind of complications and infections that are going to come through things like candy drops. These are weaponized USBs which can be thrown anyhow. Then someone picks them and tries to lure the unsuspecting users to be able to push this flash, and then they can be able to have an installation being done without their knowledge. So this is again another way that you can be able to combat this. So for this session, you might not maybe go through all these kind of components, but I really urge you guys to maybe find some time, get to the website, trying to understand all these kind of components. So this is where you can be able to have things like IoT security, why this matters, have these kind of sessions now, deep dive, and then try to understand. Let me see whether there is maybe a question before we continue. Muhammad, I don't know whether you were asking a question. Can see you. All right, so it's a question here. So, what are the specific features of Prisma that can defend against shadow IT and securing cloud infrastructure as organizations move from on-premises to hybrid or distributed cloud? All right, so you wanted to address about the shadow IT. So these are some of the things that we normally talk about. This is trying to understand that how can these technologies be able to combat these kind of things. So shadow IT entails when you can be able to have things that the IT guy cannot be able to understand. So one thing that Palo Alto does best is what you call visibility, trying to understand what is happening in the network. So how we reduce this kind of shadow IT is one, by teaching you. If we could have gotten one of the sessions, then we'll see that some some things are very interactive. For example, you see something that you didn't know before. There is a link that once you click it, it gives you all the information. This application has never been seen before. So apart from blocking or apart from maybe trying to mitigate these risks, but also it can be able to enhance visibility and also help you to learn. So the same platform that is being delivered here from the Prisma part. So think about Prisma One to be something like Prisma access. So Prisma access is firewall as a service, for example. So instead of, let's say you have a client who is in Dubai, then they have got another branch in Kenya. So, and then they want to have, the setup being done in 2 or 3 days. So instead of, doing all these processes, shipping a box, then having someone to install, you can get firewall as a service from one of the nearest data centers, cloud. So yours is just create service channels, maybe from here, Kenya, then to Dubai. So by doing this, you are going to get the consistent security no matter which kind of platform that you're going to use. So one, you have this kind of positive model. So one of the things in which I can be able maybe to say on how they can be able to combat this kind of shadow IT is one, by making sure that you have this kind of positive security model. So if I could have gotten a chance when we deploy allow any, so when we are doing this kind of policies, we say when you make a policy from trust to untrust, allow. Then there is what we call application analytics, whereby you are going to compare different applications that were seen within that rule as part of trying to understand which kind of applications that were seen in these specific rules. Then you can go select these applications that I think I know this application and this application. Then you say, I want to add them to a certain rule, or I want to create another rule that is almost like a clone of this with only the applications that I need. So by doing this, you are going to make sure that you understand one, what your users, which kind of applications that your users are trying to access. Two, you can get all this kind of visibility, like now getting these things like when we were talking about the breach that happened in this casino. This was purely one of the scenarios in which shadow IT was seen because they were not able to get this kind of visibility, which kind of traffic that is passing, like IoT traffic. Can you be able to understand which kind of traffic is this? So if let's say this is Prisma and you are trying still to access some workloads, so we've got Prisma Access and Prisma SaaS. So Prisma SaaS is for the applications which are hosted from the cloud. So as organizations are moving to the cloud, we need to make sure that we have got visibility and we have got the consistent security policies. So what you are pushing from the on-prem is the same thing that you're going to get from the cloud. So enhance more visibility. There is this kind of the third last, what you call SaaS. So we've got some nice SaaS reports that again nobody's doing, most of these platforms out there. So if you get the SaaS report, this is a very nice report that enhances more visibility into what users are trying to consume. Who is the user who pushed most of the traffic? Who is this user who had most of these kind of components? I don't know whether we can whether we should set another session where now we can be able to do this kind of product demo, or maybe if you want this kind of product demo, still we can set up as a small session, maybe with you or with your team, so that you can now be able to do some kind of demonstrations of this kind of new capabilities around the platform. So I think this enhances more on how we can be able to reduce this kind of shadow IT by enhancing visibility, by continuously helping these network admins to learn on how to get somewhere. Sometimes you are requested by your maybe the head or the directors, they want a report. So what is the SaaS usage? Then you cannot be able to understand. So by using these kind of tools, by having these kind of reports, you cannot be able to make informed decisions. And also by having this kind of knowledge nuggets which are going to emanate from the platform themselves. So you can also learn each and every day, and hence try to reduce this kind of shadow IT, both from the on-prem then to the cloud. One thing you again is worth noting is that you will see that there is consistency. Even if it's this panorama management tool, it almost looks the same as the next generation firewall. The interface looks almost the same. You just get maybe 2-3 things or something like features which are more of management that are going to be within this. So one of the key things about Palo Alto they recommend is that consistent security, whether from the cloud or on-prem. So you need to get consistent security and visibility, whether you are on a cloud or you are on-prem. All right. Sorry. Okay. So that was quite a good question. I don't know whether I've answered that question. Please let me know, Farah. All right. So you can always reach out. Otherwise, I thank you for your time.